So in this lesson, let's just talk about collecting and recording your creative journey. And by that, I mean having some sort of process where you can collect resource material. So this is a photograph that I took and I've printed it out because I needed some reference to do with colours. I have an iPhone and my camera on there is incredibly good. In fact, the phone cameras these days are probably better than some of the cameras that are out there. I know I had an old SLR Pentax and I was sort of spending a lot of time getting that all set up on a tripod, only to find that actually my iPhone, my camera on there was better. So do look into the quality of the camera that you're going to be using. What I would say is if that you are going to be collecting information and photographs on your phone, is to make a folder within your photograph app. If you like, you can make albums. So make an album for painting reference, otherwise you'll very quickly lose them. They'll get lost. Also might want to collect postcards. This is a nice card that I picked up of an artist, but you know, it's really not good practice to slavishly copy somebody else's artwork. But we are all inspired by each other. Most artists will be inspired by another artist, whether it's a contemporary artist or whether it's one of the old masters. And there's nothing actually wrong with that, as long as you're not copying them. So I'll just show you how I used this as an inspiration for a piece of work. This is one of my photographs here, and obviously the colours are a bit boring, and I thought, no, I need to introduce some different colours there. But I liked the fact that the sea is rolling towards you with a little bit of a horizon in the background. I liked the colours of this one, and I actually liked this rolling wave here. But I also liked the fact that the bird, and this is what inspired me about this particular card, is actually flying through the waves. It's not actually in the sky. It's, you know, amongst all the action. So with those three bits of reference, I painted this. So I still use this idea of the sea rolling in with a little bit of the horizon here at the back. And I used this for this sort of effect here. So I just used a bit of it. And then I didn't use the same bird. I used a different resource material to get a bird there, just sort of looking, perhaps looking for its dinner, who knows. So that's how you can use other people's work as a reference for your own. On the internet, there's a whole range of photographs you can use. You know, things like this. But they are somebody else's photograph. But you will find there are sites that are royalty free. Now, some of them you will pay for, some of them you have to pay a subscription, a monthly subscription, some of them you can just pay for the actual image. And on other sites, if you look hard enough, you'll find that there are sites that just want you to thank the photographer. So it might just be a question of going over to their Instagram page and just saying, I just want to say that I've used your photograph, I really love it, thank you so much, and this is what I've done with it. So be really, really careful about using other people's images. So that's how to do it. Photographs, cards, magazine clippings, bits of colour swatches. I even collect, you know, objects. You know, I even put where I got them from, and I surround myself with them. So it's good to have lots of reference material around you. Plus it gets you into the right mindset, which we've already discussed in previous lessons. So how do you actually look after this? How can we store it? And this is where the recording part comes in. You might be a person, I will just move these for a second, that would just rather just have a box file and just literally just chuck things in as you find them, you know, photographs, cards, etc. As simple as that. And when you've filled one, you'll do another. You might decide to have different box files for different things, one to do with bird reference or lighthouses or rocks, and another one to do with the wave movement, etc. So you might want to do that. If you are somebody who likes to write notes, about things and do almost like a scrapbook type thing. You stick bits of tickets in and bits of information that you find, so it's more of a scrapbook type thing. This is another one. This is more of a travel journal, but you know, all sorts in there to do with images that I've found on my journeys. Or you might just want a lever arch file and keep them in plastic pockets. Okay. Or you might want to have a sketchbook. So I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about sketchbooks because there are so many different types. And this is quite a big one. It's not actually filled with watercolour paper. It's filled with cartridge paper. So, you know, any painting in here would not be the same. But it's a good way of collecting images and trying drawings. So these are some photographs that I've taken. This was a bit of a drawing I took to sort of look at tonal differences in preparation for a painting. Or you might want a slightly smaller one, but you know, you might have a bit of money and you might treat yourself to a really beautiful one. Once again, you know, you can try things out with different colours, different techniques, little bits of notes. Then I've been doing some birds because I think, well, they might be useful at some point, and tried a different colourway. Put some of my own photographs in and worked into those with coloured pencil and spattered them with a toothbrush to create more splash. Then I've had a go at maybe, you know, the colours I might use with a bit of watercolour, but you can see that's a different sort of finish on cartridge paper. But you know, it's good. It's fine for a sketch, a working sketch. This is another one of my photographs which I've worked into, and I've highlighted the rocks a little bit more so that there's a bit more contrast between dark and light. And then I've tried out some cling film, thinking, well, that might work in that area with a bit of salt, which obviously we're going to talk about when we start our painting. You might want to have a very small one where you can collect bits of images, etc. But this is great to put in your pocket or in your bag. And I use this when I'm out and about painting en plein air, you know, actually out in the open air. And I decided that I was going to actually do double page paintings on every page of this one. So these are some of the paintings that I've completed, mainly to do with the sea. I think there's one there. Okay. And I keep that with me, and when I've filled it, I just start another. You know, these are not very expensive, but you know, you can make a really nice collection of these. Or you can make your own. Now, I didn't actually make this one, I'm going to say that, but this is the sort of book that you could make, and they call it an altered book, where you just get any old book. It can even be a book, like a novel, and you could paint out the pages with white emulsion, and then you could start to draw on top of that and add images, etc. But this is one that was already bought for me like this. But this particular person has actually filled this book full of all sorts of different papers, including envelopes. You know, they've stuck bits of maps on there. They've used different coloured papers, brown papers, etc. And then they've bound it. They put a nice sort of fabric on the cover and on the back. And it wasn't fat like that, but I love sketchbooks when they get like that. That's because I've been working in it quite a lot recently. So it isn't just dedicated to the sea, but I've done some watercolour painting, and there's nothing stopping you painting on watercolour paper, then cutting it out and sticking it into a book. And you know, then you've got an exact replica of what it's going to be like when you paint on watercolour paper. You know, you can make it quite attractive by drawing outside of the area. This one was to do with the sea, and I was just trying out an idea of what a boat would look like in a very stormy ocean, and bits of cling film here and the colour scheme, etc. But you know, I do use this for all sorts of other bits as well. And I put little quotes in here, and sometimes I use even gift tags, which I can show you. I use stamps. There we are. So this page is dedicated to trees, and then you know, I found a little quote about trees, and I've done some colour mixing. and some techniques that could possibly be used, bits of sponging here, which is how I get the effect of foliage, etc. Now this one is one that I've made, and it's got a little bit scruffy, but a friend and I, we sort of give each other a subject matter, and we can both complete a page on that subject, and then we do another page. So for example, she gave me a page on baking. So you can make it really creative and beautiful. So if you were thinking about the sea, you could collect things that you find on the beach. You could have bits of sand in there, little pebbles which could be incorporated in some sort of design. You can stitch on it. You can stitch words. You know, you could put the sea and you could actually stitch it if you're into stitching. You can still do your drawings and your paintings and stick them in, but I made this in a similar way to the book I've just shown you by using envelopes. Some of them can be little that you can put pockets in. I even used an old flower bag because I think I'd just come to the end of one. And then you punch holes, and there's a way that you can bind this really easily. This is like a Japanese form of binding, and the beauty of this is that, you know, every month or so, if you want to add more pages, you just undo it and then you rethread it. So there you have it. There's lots of different ways to record information that you collect, but you need to start thinking about that now. You need to think, oh yeah, I fancy doing that, or no, that's not my bag, I'd rather do this, and make a start. Go out, have a look at what's around you, take photographs, collect images from magazines, go to these DIY shops and get some colour swatches of really beautiful colours that you'd like to emulate, and make a start and start doing some notes. I love doing that. I get really excited. In fact, sometimes I get more excited about the preparation and the recording than I do about the final piece.